Reality Fighter TV. In this video tutorial, I want to share with you and define and discuss 3 types of striking delivery patterns that you may face in a self-defense situation or an MMA application. I also want to further share with you the 3 primary types of upright fighting stances or platforms that these striking delivery patterns can and will be delivered and used against you. So let's go ahead and dive into it. Okay, the primary focus of today's tutorial is to get you to understand and recognize that there are many different ways that a striking technique can be delivered or thrown at you from the point of conception, right, to the point of its destination here, its intended target. Okay, so I'm going to share with you the 3 primary types, and that any technique that can be thrown at you in here, whether it's a linear strike or whether it's a circular strike, doesn't matter if it's a person, whether it's male or female, big, small, short, fat, it doesn't matter, whether it's self-defense application or whether it's an MMA application. Okay. Now it's also important, the reason why I want to share this with you and understand this, get you to understand this, is because these 3 delivery patterns are going to play a huge role into what defensive technique selection you use in order to stop and avoid damage. Okay? And it's also going to help you to understand and perceive more of why you cannot train in combat by the mindset of paralysis by analysis. In other words, you cannot have a subjective mind, or I do not recommend to have a subjective mindset when choosing certain skill sets, whether it's a defensive skill set to apply against an offensive skill set, or it's an offensive skill set applying to a defensive skill set. Because nobody is robotic in nature, and martial arts is not robotic. It's very dynamic. Everything is constantly changing, right? What I mean by everything is the point, the time frame in which someone delivers a technique to whether they step, right? So if somebody delivers a technique and they step over to the right and throw a hook or something, and they do that 10 times, right? They're going to deliver it slightly different each time. And it's so hard to even the trained eye to even see the very subtleties in the difference in here. I mean, you can't even take a stopwatch and time, the time frame in between from one action to the next. And everybody's going to deliver, throw, techniques at you or use defensive techniques in here based on their experience, based on the level of understanding of martial arts in general, based on their style or system they study in, and more importantly, what most people miss, it's their psychological approach to combat. In other words, when they approach a fearful situation, in other words, combat in here, right, where their life is on the line in here, either in reality or in sport. In other words, their life is on the line to some degree, but their ego is more on the line, right, and their career and their credibility to the world is on the line. People are going to respond, either very aggressively or passively or erratically in here, very precisely, differently. They're all going to respond differently based on how they feel, how they feel, internally. In other words, their psychological feeling, all their thoughts and feelings and beliefs that that they think makes them feel, makes them be in a safer position is going to is going to play a huge role in how they use, how they throw techniques and how they defend against techniques. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive into it and pay attention throughout the entire length of this video in here about the specifics I'm going to talk about the 3 types of striking delivery patterns that can be used against you may recognize, and why you cannot pick certain defensive techniques specifically ahead of time because you have no idea what's going to happen to you when it's happening to you. And don't forget to subscribe and like and check out my playlists in here on specific martial art topics that you may be interested in. Let's go ahead and get into it. Okay, so there are 3 primary striking delivery patterns that I'm going to share with you today that can be used against you, whether it's a self-defense situation or a MMA situation. But just before I get into that, I want to share with you the 3 primary upright stances that these delivery patterns can come from, right? Now these 3 primary stances, 2 of them are not going to be used in sport combat because they don't have any reference there. But irregardless, I want to share them with you in here because every martial artist or fighter is practicing striking techniques from one of these 3 positions, okay? So it's important that you understand these stances in here because they're going to play a major role in the delivery, the execution of one of these three primary striking delivery patterns I'm going to share further as we go through this video. So the first primary stance that martial arts practice their skill sets from is what's called combat ready positioning here, right? Combat ready position here, irregardless if I'm standing in a southpaw stance or a conventional orthodox position in here, right, is a stance that's defined as a platform that you operate from that's going to allow you to access all your techniques in the fastest time frame possible. Okay, so what that means is if I'm standing with my guard, my hands up, my guard here, my legs are loaded in here like this, I have just pulled all my guns out and have them laid out ready for me to access them. In other words, they're not in my waistband anymore, they are out ready to go. So I can throw techniques in here, right, in one-step motion most of the time, right? I can get into a kick immediately like this, right? I can step forward, I can step backward, my hands are here to defend myself, right? I can throw techniques from all different kind of angles in here like this. So I don't have to load them. They're already loaded and ready to go, right? So that is the first stance that most people are going to practice their techniques from, is what's called combat ready, okay? The second stance that people practice techniques from, and this is usually self-defense situations, this doesn't really apply to MMA, is what's called confrontation management. Confrontation management is the idea of putting your body in a somewhat of a position of physical readiness. In other words, it's more of a passive version of your combat ready stance, right? So if this is your combat ready stance and you're like a bull ready to go in here like this, what would be a more passive version of it that still gives you the ability to access your techniques relatively fast in here, right? So a lot of times it looks like something like this, where I put I have a leg back in here, I blade it off in here, I have what's called a drive leg in here. My hands are up in here to kind of manage the confrontation here, through my physical body language, my verbal and psychological skill sets in here, right? So it's not, it's designed not to look aggressive and to antagonize, but it has put me in a position because my opponent has somehow telegraphed or forewarned me that they're going to attack me. So a lot of times people will get up here and go, hey, listen, take it easy, calm down. They're going to try to maintain their distance in here, and their hand position is going to change in here based on the psychological threat that they feel or what they think they need to do in here, right? But the advantage of it is it allows me to still access, techniques relatively quick in here, right? I can throw a quick linear technique like a finger jab in here like this. I could block in here, right? I could deliver a kick in here, right? I could push somebody relatively, easily. So the second one is called, confrontation management. The third one, which is definitely not practiced in sport combat, along with the second one, is what I call reaction training position or gunfighter position. And this is primarily a stance to train from. However, it is very likely that you're going to find yourself like this in a street situation for at least a split second. So we call this a training position here is because this teaches you how to go from a completely unready position. In other words, you're going to have to access 2 or 3 steps of action in order to get a technique off, and sometimes more depending on the delivery of the technique. So when you're standing here, flat-footed like this, the idea here is to have your knees slightly unlocked so you can, go into action right away, and to have your arms down relatively by your side here, like if you're going to grab your gun in here, right, like a gunslinger in here, right? And so if I'm going to practice delivering a technique from, let's say, a punch in here, I have to, put my hand on the gun, right, and pull the gun out in here like this and get it in the line of fire in here, right? So if this was a punch in here like this, all right, I'd have to get it up in the line of fire, and at the same time, in order for me to be effective with the technique, not just get it in position, I have to get my body in a position to transfer its weight, right? So I have to get I have to pull the gun out in here and get my drive leg going in here like this and get into a position for a moment here where I kind of, for a split second, I've transitioned into combat ready for just a moment in here, right? So when it's happened 100 miles an hour in here, I boom in here like this, it just comes out in here like this. And the idea is to learn how to be prepared for a surprise attack. This is all about, stopping a surprise attack in here. Often, a lot of times, you're going to have to defend yourself, right, and then deliver a technique. So a gunfighter position or reaction training position is a stance that often that most human beings are going to be standing in every day of their life when her hands are down at their side walking around. Our hands aren't walking around like this, and we're not standing all the time in a unilateral stance, only when we're walking in here. Is a stance that teaches you how to go from a complete unready position. So if I'm standing like this in here and there's somebody over to my flank, right, I may have to go into this stance in here and like this. So it teaches you how to go transition into a stance that you need at that moment in here. And it may not always be the best stance, but it's a stance that allows you to get an initial action immediately to at least start to solve your problem. So those are the three primary stances that any one of these three striking delivery patterns are going to originate from. So now, being that said, let's go ahead and talk about and define the three types of delivery striking patterns that you may face from one of these three types of stances. Okay, so I just discussed and defined the three primary upright stances that most martial artists and fighters are going to practice their techniques from, irregardless if it's a self-defense application or an MMA approach. Now let's go ahead and get into the three types of delivery patterns that any one of these stances can be used in order to demonstrate these patterns in here. There are three, and they're listed as this. The first one is what's called a precision strike. The second one is what's called an erratic strike. And the third one is what's called an artless strike. Let's go ahead and start with the first one, which is a precision strike. A precision strike is defined as a technique used by somebody, whether it's a punch or a kick, that person expressing that technique is trying to have some type of form, I should say trying, that they know what exactly the path that technique is trying to take. From the point of conception to the point of destination, they have a meaning, a reason, a rhyme behind that technique, right? Irregardless of what stance they're operating from. So for example, if I'm in a combat ready position in here like this, and I want to demonstrate, let's say that I'm going to demonstrate a jab, that person who's delivering that execution or the expression of that jab knows exactly what they're trying to do with it. So from their combat ready position in here, they're trying to take a very precise route, right, in here, however they're going to throw their jab in here, right, to the target. In other words, it's not going to deviate off the path. It's not going to have any wasted motion behind it, okay? In other words, it's going to be something that's very simple that they are trying to show their opponent in here, whether their opponent is able to defend it or not in here. They're trying to demonstrate that jab is going to do some kind of, it's a speed strike. They're trying to use speed behind it. They're trying to stun and here like this. They're not trying to put the energy into it like if they were to throw like an Artless haymaker. So there is a specific reason in that person's mind of why they're delivering that type of technique and the trajectory of that technique. Okay, so with any technique, right, a precision technique, if I'm throwing a precision rear cross in here off my left side in here, right, I'm trying to take the specific path to the target in here like this. I'm putting my body in a specific position that I feel is the best position in here in order to demonstrate this kind of action here like this, right? Same thing, it could be a front kick in here. I'm trying to economize the motion from a combat ready position, and I'm trying to kick you in the groin. And so I have this idea of how to get my body very quickly from here to here and get this foot into action in here like this and then get it right back down on the ground. I'm in control of the technique. I'm accurate with the technique in here, right? If I'm throwing a back fist from combat ready position, right? I'm trying to take the most simplest route there in here and get my body in the right muscles, right behind the technique and not over or under commit. Okay? Now, if I took the same precision concept and I applied it into confrontation management, right, which is not quite such a loaded and ready position, but somewhat, the same thing would apply. So let's go back to the jab. I'm applying a jab from confrontation management. I got my hands up in here like this. I'm trying to, trying to keep a barrier between you and I here like this. I'm thinking the lead side of the body. I want to throw a quick strike that's going to take a very short route to the target in here, right? So I deliver it from here, right? I'm talking and go, listen, take it easy in here, right? Bang, and I come out like this, right? I'm not taking the technique from here and then winding it up and trying to swat at you like this. right? I'm hitting with a specific part of my fist in here, whether it's like this or whether it's like this, right? But irregardless from confrontation management, the same thing applies in here. The difference is that you're going to probably, depending on how passive you do the stances from, right, you're going to have to get a little more loaded while you're in action like that, right, from initial action, which means that you're probably going to telegraph a lot more, but it doesn't change the precision process. So if I'm delivering, I'll do it from this side, if I'm delivering a precision jab from confrontation management and I don't quite have the leg load in here like this, right, I'm not going to wind the technique up or throw some artless technique. What I am going to do is I'm going to get my body in a better position. I'm going to drop my weight, whatever it's going to be. But the idea, again, the idea behind a precision action is to have a specific meaning to what you're trying to do with it and not to have anything else added onto it that's going to waste energy, jeopardize position, and anything that's going to maximize the effect and minimize the effort, right? If it was from reaction training position or gunfighter position, the same thing applies. Now I have to get myself into a 2 to 3 step action before the weapon is in the line of fire in here like this. So the only difference is that there's more telegraphing action going on because you aren't in your combat ready position or you have your hands up. So you have to get yourself in that stance, right? So I'm standing here like this, relatively flat-footed. For me to throw a precision jab, I would still try to follow the same path, the same line of fire in here to the target here, because not be out of position in here. But so you'll see people, they may have their hands down here like this, and because they don't practice from here, they don't know how to deliver a precision strike. As opposed to here, their body's already loaded, so they're used to loading their muscles and firing the technique, right? Whatever technique it's going to be in here. But when they get down here, because their muscles are not so active, they don't know how to get it into this position. So what happens is that their punch becomes some kind of an artless technique or something like that. So irregardless of one of those 3 types of stances, right, you can deliver a precision technique, whether it's a punch, a kick, an elbow in here. So hands down like this, right, I'm going to deliver a front kick, I got to get my body in position, bang, like this, right. So I have an idea of how to get that to the target, right, whatever that target is, the groin, the head, whatever, right. If I'm going to deliver an uppercut, the same thing applies. I'm trying to go into the chin in here, get it right into position in here like that. Okay? So that's the first one, delivering a precision delivery pattern here from one of those 3 types of stances. Let's go on to the second one now. Okay, I just discussed and defined the definition of a precision strike from any one of those 3 types of stances. The second striking delivery pattern that you're going to probably witness is what's called an artless striking pattern. So this is the complete opposite at the other end of the scale spectrum from precision. Now we're going to the opposite, and I'm doing this for a reason in here because I think it's easier to see the difference. Now an artless strike is something that most martial artists are not ready for, whether again in the street or whether it's in sport. Artless strikes usually don't happen in sport combat. They do a little bit, depending on the fighter's skill level, but very, very probable in a street application. An artless delivery pattern is something that doesn't have any rhyme or reason. It's formless. It never takes the same path to the target. It's all over the place, and it doesn't always start from the same position, right? Unlike a precision strike, right? If I'm throwing a precision rear cross in here, right, the fighter or the martial artist who's operating, the operator in here, knows, okay, I have to get my elbow up and I have to deliver it like this, right? That's their method of delivery. They know they got to get it up in this position in here. It can't be, it can't be something where their elbow's down and delivering it, and they're not hitting with the right part of their knuckle in here. Whatever the technique may be, right? If they're throwing, a front kick in here, they know that they got to get their back leg up like this and raise their knee, extend their hips forward in here like this and come back down, right? An artless version of that would be just trying to take the limb or the weapon itself and just trying to get the hammer there. In other words, if I'm striking with a closed fist, and my idea is to throw my rear cross, but I have such a such a blockage, a psychological blockage, and delivering that technique. In other words, usually artless strikes come from when somebody's super angry, super frustrated, and so their idea of survival or defending themselves is to use a lot of force, a lot of power, to put all their energy into their action, irregardless of what the action is. They're just trying to hopefully see the end result and cause damage. Okay, so like an artless rear cross would be something like a haymaker where they just kind of boom come out here like this. They're just trying. The punch is obviously going to take, you know, a loopy kind of semicircular, right? You can't even like draw this in here, bang, right? And they're just trying to get their fist there. They're often out of position, okay? And the technique may be throwing like this at one time, and then their hands may be down from here, right? Then it may come up like this. The technique could come from out here, right? You know, it's like the elbow and the wrist aren't into alignment like the precision strike is in here. Their hands could be, if they're in a combat ready position, their hands could be something like this, and they loop the punch over the top. But they know from the rear side of their body that this is their rear cross punch, right? Or if they're right hand like this, right? They know if they're going like this in here, they know in their head that they've trained for, you know, trained to throw what's called to them a rear cross or a rear hook or something. And often when you blend the two ideas together, you get what I call just an artless haymaker, right? So they're just trying to get their fist there, irregardless of the direction it takes in here, and they're just concerned about the end result. Okay. Now, if you took that same technique and you threw it and delivered it from confrontation management, which is very likely in the street, you may have somebody who's standing there with their hands like this, right? Their hands are up in here like this, and what they're going to do is their body's in somewhat of that position, right? But the punch is just going to come out, boom, like this in here, the same basic idea, right? Or they're going like this in here, you know, take it easy, relax, and something in here like this, right? So in combat ready, you know, it may be like this, and in confrontation management, their hands can be all over the place, in here like this, looking at their watch, reaching in their pocket, you know, scratching their head, and just kind of wham, like this. And in a split second, it's so hard to see that trajectory. It's very hard to discern on what direction that technique is ending up in. A lot of times we don't pick up on the destination or the line of direction that the technique is actually taking, because it's so all over. One minute, you know, there's a big difference between this action, right, coming around here, right, and coming like this. They're just slightly little different, you know, degrees of that. But that is a huge difference in kind of what defenses people choose. And often that's why most times in the street, that's striking, that artless kind of action is very effective and causes damage. It, you know, hits somebody, you know, it's coming very hard and very fast, and they're not ready for it. So irregardless, I'm just using the rear cross as an example. An artless technique, right? I could throw an artless, an artless roundhouse kick in here, right? So, you know, it could be something where a guy's just kind of flicking his leg out here like this, and he's trying to torque it around, but he's quite not there. I can't even look so silly on the camera in here, but they are doing something, you know, here like this in here, right? They're just going like this in here, and it really doesn't have that functional trajectory that you're aiming, like a precision technique where you're really trying to, you know, aim the body and torque the body into the knee or the leg or something in here. Okay, so that's a definition of an artless, you know, striking here, right? If my hands were down from like gunfighter position in here, and I was going to throw a surprise attack in here like this, right? Just me come out in here like this, right? And you know, the punch usually kind of overshoots, overcommits. They're out of balance in here like that, right? You know, it could be just boom in here like this. You know, they could get their weight behind it, right? It could just be their arm, bam, in here like this. It could be a slap, right? But you can see the difference. The point is, it just doesn't really, you know, come from any specific, you know, direction in here. Standing here like this, boom, going like this, right? Or coming out here, right? So that is a definition of an artless striking pattern from one of those three stances. Let's go on to the next one. Okay, the third and final striking delivery pattern that I want to share with you, and I saved this one for last on purpose, is what is called erratic striking. And the reason why I saved this one for last is because this is the most common striking pattern that is delivered by professional fighters, professional martial arts, most of the time, because it's somewhere between the artless and the precision. And the reason why most people, in my opinion, deliver a technique in an erratic manner is because of the psychological mindset that's going through their head a million miles an hour in a survival or fighting situation. All right. Now, again, this doesn't happen, it's not every time they do this, but a lot of times I can tell, like, like when you're, for example, if you're training or something, you're watching yourself sparring, and you watch your techniques. You'll see some techniques that you deliver have a more of a telegraphic action, or they kind of take a, they don't quite take the specific line, that you wanted to, like if you were hitting the bag or the mitt, right? There's more telegraph, there's more load. Your hands aren't, quite, in the best position that you thought they were in here like that. So you watch it back on video or something, and you're going like, I could have made that a little better or something. But an erratic strike is something that has some form, some rhyme to it, but it doesn't take the most functional trajectory. It could have wasted motion in it. It could have like there's more complexity in the technique in here. So for example, like going back to a combat ready position, maybe I'm throwing a jab, right? And on the bag or on the focus pad, my jab, is perfectly just coming out in a nice straight line, out and back, right? It's not looping, right? It's not swatting. It's not coming from here from one time, and the next moment I deliver it here, right? And the next moment I deliver it like this. That would be an artless action. I'm just trying to throw the ball any which way, and hopefully I hit you, right? An erratic version of that would be where I start somewhere in form, okay? But for whatever reason in here, mostly again psychological, that I kind of add some extra action into it, right? Maybe I kind of swat the technique there. So if a perfect kind of like piston-like motion like this would be my jab, right? And an erratic version would be maybe I kind of start like a hammer version, and then I kind of get it there, right? Or maybe my hand is down in here like this, and I kind of bring it up like this, right? But then for the most part, it straightens out, right? Or let's say that it's a hook, right? So an erratic, a erratic hook would be maybe, I'm trying to get it there very quickly in here, and I kind of, bring the punch over like this, like that in here, right? As opposed to coming straight around and delivering like most people would think of a hook like a curling action, maybe my elbow's down and I kind of deliver it like this, right? Or, maybe I kind of, I arc the punch over a little bit or something in here, okay? It could be, let's say that this could be a right cross in here, right? A straight right, and a precision one would be, coming right down the pipe like this, wham, out and back, right? Going from point A to point B, and nothing, no deviation in between, and an erratic one would be, slightly kind of maybe looping the punch a little bit, and then for the most part it goes straight, right? Coming out, like this, right? Or maybe, their hand comes from the center of their body like this, and then it almost pretty much straightens out. So at speed, you may not, notice that, but you play it back on video and you see kind of, something like this, right? It's definitely not an artless technique where he's taking one line like this, and that one doesn't land. On the next line he's taken like that, right? And the next line he's taken like this, right? So you can see the difference, right? Erratic technique, if I was doing it for confrontation management, right? It's going to take most of the form there, right? So I'm taking my left hand in here like this, and I'm going to throw a hook or something, right? Where it'd be, I kind of, take the direction, boom, like this, right? It's almost following, this precision movement in here where I bring the biggest and most muscles to utilize to deliver that kind of torquing power. Maybe the punch kind of loops a little bit, right? Or maybe I kind of hit with a different part of my knuckle in here, and my elbow's down in here, but I'm still trying to take this circular direction and arc my body in here, right? Doing it from kind of the gunfighter position in here, or the sucker punch position, right? The guy, steps into position in here, right? And kind of boom, like this, right? And again, at speed on video, it looks explosive, devastating, and it is, right? But when you play it back, you can see the difference between, precision, erratic and artless, okay? So again, any technique can be delivered in one of those three forms, virtually from any one of those three upright body positions, okay? So with that being said, there are going to be different ways that you're going to have to approach defensive skill sets to those three types of delivery patterns for any technique that somebody delivers to you in here, okay? So I hope this video was informative to you and you found it helpful. If you did find it helpful, please give it a like, share it with your friends, comment on it, and don't forget to subscribe and check out my playlist. Like I said earlier, there are some playlists specifically for certain techniques and tactics that you may find interesting if you're an MMA practitioner specifically. And stay on the lookout for my next tutorial that may be a continuation of this video. It's a why do fighters in martial arts throw or deliver artless and erratic strikes? And what is the method behind that? In other words, why are they doing that? So stay tuned and look out for that. Thank you again, and take care.